A very packed agenda. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And Louis, if we can start just with a presentation of the minutes. No, yes, I do. We have to change that if it is. Which program names? Okay. Louis, just highlight, Janet, we have to correct the spelling of Clavis and Haggerty on the. Haggerty's up a little bit more, Louis. Some long minutes, huh?
A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. So just for everyone's information, you guys received a copy of the minutes because I know they're really long. Oh, Neely, can you do, you got to take, stop right there. Stop. You got to highlight Neely Rosick. That you just basically butchered her name. That's got to be changed today. Assemblywoman Neely Rosick. We got to switch that one. Yeah. Yeah. And Flamingo, gotta be changed too, down at the bottom. Flamenco. Okay, keep going. Okay. So is everyone in consensus to approve the minutes with changes? Yes, I see Gus. I see Joe. Shirley, where's your hands, your thumb? Don't you normally? Thank you, Lamar. Thank you. Okay, Rachel, thank you. Okay, if you could just pop up the agenda really quick, I just want to go through because we have a lot that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to begin with talking about a presentation for us on the K-5 unified curriculum selection of HMH into reading. I have all of my instructional team here today, but and they will be presenting. Anna Arrigo will be leading the work that we're doing. So Anna, I will introduce you in a minute. We're going to be talking about the presentation of what is in this core curricula option, and then we're going to be doing our implementation crosswalk in how we are working with our building leaders and teachers to sort of support and roll this out to see what it will look like. Wait, keep it up there. So we're going to also finalize and approve our D25 parent engagement policy. I did work on that. We took into consideration some of the feedback from last meeting. And Dr. Mike will also, hold on. Dr. Mike will also be rolling out some of the feedback that we have just around our vision for parent engagement and what that looks like in terms of supports and expectations for our schools as they are working on their own parent engagement plans and policies, as well as their goals for the 2023-24 school year. Gus has some information around DLT supports, the new CEP document, and he'll be presenting on that today. And then we have our high school and high school subcommittee report. So I would like to open up to say that over the past few weeks, we have really engaged in working with our communities, specifically with principals, teachers, and we actually also made a presentation during our CEC meeting of District 25's decision to go a unified curriculum district-wide. Anna, so I think like our why piece, when you do the presentation, we can sort of cut through because it is a very long presentation. So I'm going to just briefly do the why, and if you can kind of go into what the core curriculum is about and our implementation plan, if that's okay. So one of the things that that as a DLT we've been talking about for a very long time is we've had district aligned goals, we've had district aligned expectations that are layered in how we're building and supporting our leaders and teachers in making improvements to practice and pedagogy to support teaching and learning. We've talked about disproportionality and how we've trained our schools just in the idea of disproportionality, in terms of student performance, in terms of referrals to special education, in terms of suspensions. We've had many conversations as a DLT in working through that. And one of the last pieces that we struggled with as a district is that so many of our schools, although had the same beliefs and values and were implementing the expectations that we had, because their curricula options were so different, and because our schools had done such rigorous work in working with teams to sort of build in and layer in what the individual needs of the school were, many of our schools had different curricula that they were presenting to their students. So we had 11 schools doing one curricula, 5 schools doing another curricula. Then we had 3 or 4 schools doing kind of one-offs of, individualized programs. And then we had a large majority of schools, the remainder of the schools, that were doing sort of a design your own curricula piece. And I'm talking about K-5. Because of this, especially with the rollout of the standards, the new standards, what was happening was many of our observations around learning targets and teaching points and looking at student work products, we were seeing sort of movement, unintentional movement away from really targeting and assessing the standards. So for some time, we really have been talking with our building leaders and our teachers about creating an opportunity to select a district-wide curriculum by which we can continue to layer in and build supports for our schools to ensure that there is consistency of the standards across the district. So as I'm saying, although this is something that the chancellor has presented to district schools that we could take part in, and District 25 has agreed to be in phase 1, this is a conversation that I have had with the borough instructional leads, now the district instructional leads, with myself and Dr. D'Antona, and it has really been preventing us from truly supporting schools in accelerating learning in the way that we wanted to. So that is that is our why as a district. And Joe DiBenedetto, during our CEC meeting, asked me a really good question. He said, is this a central initiative? And I said, it is a central opportunity, but it is something that, as the superintendent of District 25, I would and have been trying to engage in that discussion for some time because of the gaps that we've been seeing. And now that will really bring together opportunities for us to work and share best practices across our schools, because we're doing this, we'll be using the same tools. We have so many amazing things happening across our schools, but if I'm a TC school and Joe's school is a ReadyGen school, and Shirley's school is a Wit and Wisdom school, and Jenny's school is a Wonder school. Do you see what was happening? I just gave you a perfect example of 4 different schools that, although they could collaborate around instruction, they had a very difficult time collaborating over content. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to do that. There's going to be a plethora of resources for teachers. We have, I will say, I'm very happy that I had an opportunity to introduce Beth Eaton as our math specialist last month. Besides Beth, many of our teams have a strong literacy background. So us rolling out a K-5 and eventually K-8 aligned curriculum, we have the people who can support our schools all of the time. And that is our expectation to do that. Additionally, having this unified curriculum is supports for parents, because parents will have access to the same materials across the district. There are many of our middle schools already using ReadyGen. So one parent at one school is not going to have different opportunities or different access to content than another parent. Will make sure that that's unified. It'll also allow us to continue to build our acceleration programs, our gifted and talented programs, and it will allow us to really have concentrated MTSS to support our students performing outside the sphere of success. So there's a lot of really great opportunities for us in terms of building a unified curriculum. We started our engagement in working with building leaders and teachers, where we asked the 3 core curriculum options that were being offered from the city to present to our leaders and teachers. They selected what they thought would help to best meet the needs of the community. And in that selection process, it happens to be the highest rated curriculum through Ed Reports that Anna's going to go over with you today. Then now this month, we are going to be engaging with our communities. So I began last week at our CEC meeting where Anna presented, and it is a recorded session that anybody can go on and look at the full session. I didn't want to take the full hour and a half because I do know that we have a lot to talk about. So Anna did that presentation to CEC. We gave the community opportunities to ask questions. Today, I am presenting to the DLT, and all of the resources that you will see today and all of the recordings, both at the DLT and the CEC, we have recommended to our building leaders to present to their SLTs for any questions, comments, and feedback. I do believe this is not something that we should just do. I think this is really an opportunity for parents, teachers, building leaders to give feedback. One of the things that we have really pointed out is because we're going to be looking at unified materials, it will help us to better target the specific and individualized needs of District 25. And specifically, I will give our largest example, which is our over 6,000 English language learners. We know that there is no curricular or instructional program that will target a district that has that many needs. So we know right off the bat that we're going to have to do some strategic work just in looking at what our curricula option, which is HMH into reading, has to offer. But we've been meeting very closely with our instructional leads and with Michelle Lee, who is also an instructional lead, but she works specifically in supports of English language learners and bilingual programs. So Michelle has been strategically working through that lens in really unpacking HMH. And as the schools will be really rolling out this work, Michelle is going to be providing supports to ensure that our new language learners, our English language learners are getting the supports that we need. And many of the really great things that we've been doing to support our English language learners across the different curriculum that we currently have in the district. So with that being said, tonight, Rachel, I know that is President's Council. So one of the things that I'm going to ask that you speak with Francis about is I can just speak the way I'm speaking right now, or Anna and I can do the presentation. And that's a decision that you can make after watching the presentation today. It is a lengthy presentation, so I don't know if you want to take an hour. I know you have a lot to do. We can condense it. And I can just start with this and ask questions, and we can say to the parent leaders, you know, this is something that you can sit at your SLT. They're going to be going through the same thing with their SLT, or we can do that for them. That is completely up to you.
Okay, I'll collaborate with Francis because I know she did send us a message that tonight we're going to be doing a mock election since elections are coming up. So
okay, so yeah, just let her know. I am happy to be here with, you know, be there with Anna to just kind of answer some blanket questions. We can refer them to this recording or the CEC recording, which is a full length recording, but they will also be experiencing it as part of the engagement that will be happening at the SLTs this month too. So completely
And I
up to you
put the
guys. We're happy to
CEC
help you.
I put the CEC link in the chat here as well, and I'll do it again tonight.
Oh, perfect. Thank you,
Got
Louis.
it.
So the
Yep.
CEC, so Louis cut the CEC meeting
Yeah.
to what he's putting in the link is just the presentation on HMH into
Mhm.
reading. Okay. So are there any questions about our why, the decisions that we've made around going to a unified curriculum in across the district?
I have one
Okay.
question. This is Lamar.
Hey, Lamar.
How you doing? Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
With regards to pros schools, how does the new curriculum work with pros? Because I know those schools tend to go a little bit, for lack of a better phrase, against the grain of
Yep.
curriculum that works. So how does that work?
So in going a unified curriculum, that is not going to be impacted by pros. So all schools, pros or not, would have to implement the HMH into reading. What pros may do a little bit differently is they can sort of ask for different types of scheduling, professional learning opportunities. They can do that. But even our pro schools will be going into reading. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so Anna, I know like you, I know I probably just completely set her off track, but
Nope.
we could go, you could kind of flip through the different pieces. I like, you know what I said, that we did our why. I want
Yeah.
them, you know, so go ahead.
yeah.
I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Absolutely. And our superintendent went over our why and our curriculum engagement process that we engage our principals and APs. So I'm going to zoom right into the curriculum so that I can give you a solid overview of our K-5 HMH into reading. Perfect. So we'll begin here. So HMH into reading received Ed Report's highest ratings in all three gateways with text complexity, text quality, building knowledge, and usability for teachers and students. The text quality that they're referring to included in the program are high quality and engaging, rigorous and organized to support knowledge building. The materials include questions, tasks, lessons, and practice that support students' development of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and beginning to think critically. Materials include foundations for students to study topics deeply and develop research habits, as well as practice different types of speaking and writing about different topics. For the usability, the implementation usability supports for teachers, it's really to ensure that students meet grade level goals in this criteria from Ed Reports, which were the highest ratings from the other two curriculum that our schools engaged in reviewing. HMH into reading was also recognized for being fully aligned to the ELA Next Generation Learning Standards, and my colleagues will add the link to one of the sample Ed reports. Please note that there's an Ed report for a K to 2 band, a 3 to 5, and a 6 to 8, and there's also specifically for each particular grade as well. So HMH into reading curriculum is grounded in creating strong, purposeful readers and writers. All of the resources embedded in HMH into reading are both teacher and student friendly. The curriculum includes engaging literature that's motivating for students and also provides strong supports for teachers with tools to help them through daily practice of the literacy skills on a daily basis for all of the students. Into reading activities invites our students to think critically about literature, to participate in authentic read alouds, shared reading, and writing tasks, and to find the joy in the act of reading so that we can promote students as lifelong readers. The curriculum has a deep basis into research, and it's applied into the science of reading and aligned to the 5 pillars of literacy. So what does the science say, and how do we build the reading brain? Within the 5 pillars of early literacy, effective instruction requires a balance of explicit, systematic instruction in all 5 pillars in early literacy, including phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics and decoding skills, fluency, academic language and vocabulary, and deep comprehension skills. These 5 pillars are embedded in the K-5 into reading curriculum. And this is where HMH comes in. HMH into reading uses the most up-to-date research around those evidence-based best practices that are informed by the science. A teacher's guide is included and provided for all classroom teachers, which outlines each module, the theme of the unit. It's designed by week and day-to-day lesson, and it is explicitly outlined for teachers to read and implement on a daily basis. Another resource that's provided in the program, guides, which provides an overview of each component within the HMH curriculum. The curriculum also consists of a collection of HMH, both fiction and nonfiction texts for students to read independently and practice the skills that were taught in the lesson. Into Reading provides a complete, connected teaching and learning system that has both a digital learning system called HMH Ed for classroom teachers. Parents can also see some of the videos as well, which we'll get into. But from the HMH Ed platform, teachers and students are able to access everything such as the instructional materials. So teachers have a teacher's guide, but can also have access to all of the materials digitally as well, both for core and intervention. There's reliable assessment, and there's also curated professional learning for classroom teachers that supports the classroom teacher in each of the modules and the lessons within each of the units. HMH Into Reading's online hub is located in a single place with a single username and password. And all of our District 25 classroom teachers now have access with a username and password to review the modules that are already in place in HMH Into Reading. So what does HMH Into Reading look like? It is built around the model of direct, explicit instruction and guided practice that's delivered to the whole group. And this is a structure that many of our schools are very familiar with. In a nutshell, explicit instruction consists of 3 parts. I do being the first part, we do being the second part, and you do being the third part, where students are working independently and reading independently to practice the skills that were taught in the whole group lesson. Explicit instruction makes learning crystal clear. It gives students lots of opportunities to practice skills and get feedback from the classroom teacher. It can be especially helpful for kids who learn and think differently at different times. That direct instruction and guided practice includes systematic, explicit instruction and literacy skills, vocabulary, reading and writing skills. This is where we name for the students, this is what readers do, this is what writers do, and we model it for them. And I'll take you through a sample lesson and where this actually lives. We show them how to use these skills through hands-on activities that's outlined for the classroom teacher, shared reading that's outlined for the classroom teacher, and interactive read alouds and model writing. During small group rotations, in addition to your whole group, teachers target their instruction to either a small group or individual students based on their data around student-specific needs. While teachers meet with small groups, students are engaged with independent application, whether it's reading or writing, collaborative work to build upon and extend their thinking. At the end of the small group rotation, the teacher gathers the students to reflect on the new learning. What was the new learning we gathered today? We learned in our independent reading books. And as a whole group, it's a time where students and the classroom teacher come back together as a whole group to have an opportunity to share what they learned so that they can use the new learning to support tomorrow's learning. As we're all familiar with SEL, social emotional learning support, SEL is the process through which students understand and manage their emotions, set positive goals, feel and show empathy, establish and maintain positive relationships, and really make those responsible decisions in the classroom. HMH into reading focuses on all of these core competencies. Part of the instruction with HMH into reading begins first with supporting our students both at the social and emotional level and helping all of our students to see themselves as capable readers and writers. The lessons have each of these components already embedded for the classroom teacher to make these connections as part of the social emotional learning. Within each grade, there are grade appropriate text that focuses on each of the competencies. So as you can see in our wheel, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. In HMH into reading, SEL is truly embedded right within the reading instruction. In the curriculum, anchor charts are provided for the classroom teacher to reflect on, to use, to implement as part of the lesson as another support. And these are already created for the classroom teacher. They're also embedded in the lesson. This is an important consideration with any new literacy resource as everything is inclusive of the literacy curriculum, as we really want to support the needs of the whole child. So I'll stop right here if there are any questions before we continue with a few more slides just to see if there are any questions from the group. Okay, I know the team is monitoring the chat. Okay, I think we're good. So within the culturally responsive environment, each text collection and library across each grade supports and creates a classroom that really fosters appreciation and respect within each of the text. Each text allows the students to see themselves as mirrors and windows as students can easily relate, make those connections within their family, within their culture, within their community, because it really promotes a culturally responsive education where teachers can teach the ways in which we are the same, points out respectfully how each student is unique. The curriculum and the text allows us to emphasize that differences are to be celebrated, not glossed over, and really to think about the different examples that live within each of the texts for our students to use as examples and role models where they can learn and continue to be responsible, respectful, and citizens of their community. As you would expect, and we have, as our superintendent said, a lot of L's within our district, there are specific scaffolds embedded in HMH into reading that is designed to specifically help our multilingual learners. As you can see, the supports live within each lesson in the teacher's guide, offering scaffolding and support for students that may need more heavy support, moderate, or light. This is embedded within every single lesson to ensure that all students are getting access to the lesson, the learning target, and the work required for that student to really practice those skills independently. There's also articulation videos for students to practice on sounding out specific words when we're introducing new vocabulary. In addition, HMH into Literacy has ELL tabletop supports, which is integrated into all of the language functions to support our English language learners. We know to be successful, multilingual learners need things like an equity of opportunity and access. They need an integration of content in the curriculum. All of these components within each of the language functions are supported in these tabletops where the classroom teacher can pull a group or partnership or individual students to really reinforce some of these strategies already taught to the whole group, but just giving more support for our L students. Within HMH into reading, there's a cross-curriculum connection within social studies and science. It is really thematically based. One example of this integration of content and language is that each module within into reading is thematic. They're built around a cross-curriculum connection to either a science or social studies. However, this does not replace our standard of teaching social studies and science. This is in addition to, as they are thematic. The reason is to really organize the instruction in a way to help increase the content knowledge for our students, within our students. We know from the research the importance that language comprehension has on skillful reading. Our students really need to have strong background knowledge and lots of opportunities and exposures to academic language and vocabulary to comprehend the reading and to be skillful readers. So rather than organizing modules around genres, they really organize them by topics. As you can see, natural disasters. Each module begins with an overarching essential question, which serves as a spine of conversation throughout the unit of study, which is 3 weeks. So within that 3 weeks, students and the classroom teacher are engaging and constantly going back to this overarching essential question. And all of the literature we read, the vocabulary we learn, the discussions we're having, really all relate back to this one particular topic within the module. So I'm going to quickly walk you through what a day would look like as a whole group reading instruction using HMH. So once students have engaged in phonemic awareness, integrity, and phonics instruction, we're then ready for a whole group instruction into reading. So this is a sample reading of HMH into reading. It's a grade 2 lesson. Each lesson is scripted in a step-by-step module where the teacher models and names the reading strategy. We show them how to use those skills through hands-on activities, shared reading, and interactive read-alouds. So in this image, you'll see from the far left corner, where Melinda will just highlight, the reading learning objectives are written, right? And this is what we want and we expect our students to be able to do by the end of the reading lesson. And we expect them to do it by the end of the reading lesson because students have had multiple exposures in practicing, right? And practicing the strategy so they're able to reach that learning target. It also states the materials needed within the lesson and names the instructional vocabulary for this lesson. If we move towards the center of the image, you will see the focus of the lesson is central idea. It begins with step 1. This is where the teacher connects and teach. This is when the teacher names and models the reading strategy of today. We're going to be engaging on the central idea and really digging into what is the central idea. An example of this lesson would be, yesterday we learned how authors select their choice of words to describe how characters' feelings are in the moment. Today we will identify the central idea by using supporting evidence and relevant details from the text. Authors have one important main idea or central idea that they want readers to know and really catch their attention. Good readers determine the central idea of a text by first figuring out the topic of a text and then paying attention to supporting evidence. Supporting evidence is a small piece of information or relevant details that tell more about the central idea. And as you can see, I'm just reading right off of this scripted lesson plan for classroom teachers to use so that we're really breaking down what the strategy is, right? What do we want kids to be able to know and understand by the end of this lesson? A central idea is the most important idea or part of the topic. In step 2, this is the we do. This is where the teacher and students read and practice the strategy together, right? So they're practicing the strategy of central idea. In step 3, this is the you do. This is when students read independently and practice the strategy in their own books. As you can see, students receive multiple layers of modeling of the strategy and are given the opportunity to practice independently, in partnerships, and in small groups. On the far right, you can see there are options for differentiated instruction for our accelerated learners and also for our students that need more support, our Ls or our SWDs, right? So there's intervention and there's other options for differentiated instruction within this lesson. And this is designed in every single lesson that teachers can have as another support in planning their instruction. The literature and text sets included in HMH into reading supports, again, just another array of like what some of the texts look like. It supports our culturally responsive, sustaining teaching environment, again, to serve just as mirrors and windows, and to really allow students to see themselves on how they can relate to a lot of the characters and parts of our community within the text that they're going to be reading. HMH into reading has assessments already embedded in each module and unit of study. Assessments are ongoing, both formal and informal, where the classroom teachers really have a clear pulse on where the students need more support in. So within the small group instruction, classroom teachers are having conversations, modeling, and really supporting students where they are. That is also part of the assessments. It includes a cohesive assessments that are standards aligned, and they're aligned to each unit module and grade level standards. The assessments allow the classroom teachers to make those purposeful instructional decisions when needed, when planning for tomorrow's lesson, in small group, in partnership, or possibly a whole group as a reteach. The curriculum also allows for frequent check-ins while students are reading independently, while the classroom teacher is modeling in a whole group. There's opportunities for the classroom teacher to listen in if students are having difficulties in figuring out, just as this example, as a central idea or any strategy being taught. It also provides places where the classroom teacher can monitor and provide ongoing specific feedback to a group of students, to a partnership, or maybe to even individual students that may need support. From the assessments, HMH into reading provides a robust array of resources that are already scripted for our classroom teachers to use as another support. So we have small group reading instruction. They're right at the students' instructional reading level, and it's teacher-led and small group differentiated instruction, which lives in each of the modules. We'll go back to flexible resources for differentiated instruction and intervention. As our superintendent mentioned, our MTSS plan, right? We really are working strongly with one of our leads, Ms. Hewlett, right, on tier 1 instruction, our day-to-day core instruction. That will be our focus in really making sure that students have multiple opportunities to practice those strategies so that we're not doing another small group instruction in tier 2, right? So really thinking about that. HMH into reading provides resources for each of these layers to really support students in where they are. And teachers can determine which resource will help them to best meet their students' unique learning needs based on their assessments and based on the data. Parents are our partners in ensuring our students, your children, become proficient readers and have a love of reading. HMH into reading involves the families in the classroom by providing an overview of each module their children will be immersed in from kindergarten to 5th grade. So just as a district, we're always sending out in every single building in our district, in our community, our Hegarty family letters, our foundation's family letters. We'll also be sending out HMH into reading module support letters for families to know what their child will be immersed in within each of the units. It truly engages families to be our true partners. It has a multilingual family letter that can be sent home at the start of every model to provide caregivers information of what their child is learning in each module. In addition, HMH into reading has additional suggestions on how schools can extend the learning at home. So within each lesson, the classroom teacher and the students are immersed in, there are additional supports and resources that can be sent home for students to practice. Again, the goal is that students are getting multiple opportunities of exposure within that strategy throughout the day. We can skip that one, Melinda. And yeah. So the rest of the titles and grades 1 through 5 can also be found in the student My Book. So students actually have a My Book, almost like a library, a collection of texts that kids can practice and read at home as well. So they're practicing independently in the classroom, but then also at home as well. So we just wanted to just highlight this and show you what that looks like. And then we can go to the pathway, Melinda. So Superintendent Demango, did you want to speak about this, or did you want me to just zoom into this? You're on mute. Sorry.
I could speak to it, but is there any way to make it bigger, Melinda? Can you kind of zoom in on it? So what I had spoken to you guys about earlier is listed in the March pathway. Wait.
1 second, we're just going to make it a little bit larger. There's a lot of guidance that we put in. So we're just going to make it a little bit bigger so you can all see it. And we're also going to provide the link in the chat as well. Now I'll mute.
Yep. And now this is, it's all right. It's all right if you can't make it bigger. I'll speak to it. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, there we go. So what we had said to you, the work that we did in March, where we engaged with our schools and building leaders and teachers, and each of the core curricular companies presented what they had to offer, and the selection was HMH into reading. So once that happened, we worked directly with the company and with Central to see what was offered and how we can support our schools in making sure that they were ordering the materials that were necessary for them to begin right away working to kind of build the first module, and to make sure that teachers had exposure to looking at the curriculum from the online tool that Anna was talking about. We've also ordered teacher guides and other materials for teachers to begin unpacking this work, which is going to be done through trainings that start at the district level within the next few weeks. So Anna, will you talk about how we structured the trainings, the K-2, the 3-5, and what the expectation of that will be for all schools?
Absolutely. So starting in conversations with some of our schools right now, assistant principals and principals are really identifying instructional leads to really support this work within each grade bands. So we're asking that principals and EPs select 2 kindergarten teachers, 2 first grade, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th to attend our one-day training at the district level, where we're going to take our classroom teachers through each of the modules and give them support lessons on the launch, but really leave them with what are all of the components within HMH? What does a pacing calendar look like? What does a day in an HMH kindergarten classroom look like? And really support them with being able to fully implement this before they leave in June. Throughout the month of May as well, we'll be having office hours for classroom teachers, APs, and principals to join as we support them side by side in really going through each of the modules. A lot of the lessons, all of the lessons, not a lot, all of the lessons are very scripted for the classroom teachers to really follow along, but we really want teachers to have time to really read through the lessons, read through the units to really see what are some of those overarching standards and learning targets that we want kids to be able to be proficient in by the end of that 3 to 4 week module. So as you know, we have a principal advisory group, so we're working very closely with them in really hearing from them, because we're here to really support them and guide them in the work to really make sure that their teachers are equipped with everything they need. Ongoing, through the summer, we'll also be doing training for classroom teachers as well within our UFT. We're working very closely with them to really support them over the summer, which is really nice because we want our teachers to really walk away with some of those materials that they're going to need for that 1st September implementation. And again, the lessons are very scripted. And what we're doing as a District 25 literacy team, we're actually writing out pacing calendars for our classroom teachers. So they know exactly what that day-to-day looks like, right? We're doing the work for them because it's a new curriculum and we really want to help them as much as possible. We're also forming an assistant principal advisory group where we want our assistant principals to be another partner with our team to really think about what else would our classroom teachers need, because we really want to support our classroom teachers in giving them all of the tools and really becoming familiar with all of the materials that are in HMH into literature. And that is why our classroom teachers already have access to all of the modules. So regardless of what grade they're going to be teaching, the overview, the components are all the same, kindergarten through grade 5. So all that we'll be learning would be in May would be that particular unit, but all of the components, the whole group, the direct explicit instruction, that lives within each of the modules. Our MTSS, our support for Ls, our support for SWDs, that all lives within the module. So we really want them to become equipped and really knowledgeable about all the opportunities that are at hand for the classroom teacher. And just one other thing, there's an online pathway for classroom teachers to really pace themselves at their own time to really see. I mean, a lot of our schools are doing this during their Monday professional learning, giving teachers time to access and really go through each of these topics. Like the first topic is Insight into Reading Classroom, preparing for your first 2 weeks, prioritize, pace, and plan your instruction. Topic 4, assess for understanding, using data to differentiate your instruction. And all of these are hyperlinked with an FAQ document, right? Teachers have a lot of questions and it's really scripted for them. And it gives them a really good insight, which I wish I had when I was a classroom teacher, that gives you step by step, here's what it's actually going to look like. And we're coming up also with 2 sample lessons so that teachers can really see what that flow will look like in like the workshop model, which many of our schools are very familiar with that structure. So we really want to keep it to the level of teachers are very familiar with and really support them where they are within the module. But our goal is by the end of June, they're going to be leaving with the materials needed for when they come back in September. They feel really ready and confident.
Thank you, Anna. And that is where the work we're layering in, if you see from May 8th through May 15th, that they're meeting in grade bands with the focus of really showing the teacher leads and the administrators what HMH has to offer, and then walking them through module 1. So by the end of June, all of our teachers will have a sample module 1 for them to begin the first lessons in September. But what we're also going to be talking to them about is ways to plan to continue that work so that each grade band, each individual grade actually will continue to grow and learn in module 1. Now, the supports that will be in place starting now and going into next year will be those office hours, will be school visits by the instructional team, and will be the work that we are doing in alignment with our 6 UFT teacher centers, where teachers will have support during the day to get any type of resources that they need regarding the rollout of this work. So we're working very closely with Central UFT just around aligned training that will happen in between now and the end of June, but also through July and August. So each of the supports that are in place for our schools, our leaders, and our teachers will be speaking the same thing. So UFT Teacher Center will not be saying anything different than, my instructional leads will be saying. So we believe that there's really strong supports in place for the rollout of InterReading. Now, one of the reasons that we know this support plan works is that we followed very similar structures in the rollout of Hegarty and Foundations this year, which is the phonics and phonemic awareness program that we are going to continue to use. So although HMH InterReading into literature does have a phonics and phonemic awareness program, we are not going to be using that because of all the training that we have engaged our schools in this year regarding the rollout, the understanding, the implementation of Foundations and Hegarty program, which has worked very well. Our teachers now know that program and are ready to continue it. Our students really love it. They love engaging in it. So that is one piece in our early childhood level that those teachers will not have to be trained in, and they can really just look at the other aspects, the reading and writing part of InterReading. Okay, so I know that was a lot in a very short period of time, but I was wondering if I want to open up right now for any types of questions that the DLT may have. I also want to highlight for you in the chat, we are talking, and I know Anna had spoken briefly about the Ed Reports overview. And what the Ed Reports overview is, it is an organization, and that's what I'll say, it's an organization that looks at, evaluates, and rates different curriculum. So we have included, and thank you, Arifa, for putting this in, and thank you, Melinda, for running the chat. We have included the Ed Reports for Into Reading, but there are another list of curricula that you could look up any curricula option in Ed Reports, and they will give you some feedback on that. Just for our references, Ed Reports, out of all of the curricula that we have compared to in terms of the core curriculum, Into Reading scored the highest in terms of the evaluation. Okay, so I see, Lamar, you have a question.
Yes. I just want to first say thank you to you and to your team for providing the structure so that staff members, teachers across the district will be properly prepared going into September, because I know that it is going to be a huge shift. I'm listening to you all and I'm saying to myself, my Lord, it's going to be a huge shift going from now until, but it's necessary, because I know from a union standpoint, we've always said that we believe there should be some form of a set curriculum, or at least, we shouldn't be designing our own curriculum, et cetera, so that we have this in place. I think is a good thing. I think is necessary, but I know that there's going to be a learning curve, so to speak, just in terms of acclimating ourselves into it. So I do want to thank you. I want to thank your team for recognizing that and hopefully giving everyone enough time so that they can hit the ground running in September, right?
Yeah.
Here's my question. If we're using Foundations in Hegarty in September, right? My concern is if we allow the door to be open to say, well, we're not going to use this, but we're going to use that, right? My concern is that going to be a problem, or could that be a problem where, schools start to use other enrichment tools and now they're getting away from HMH, right? Because we've already said we're going to keep Foundations, even though that there is some sort of program that's similar in HMH. The concern is that it leaves the door open for other schools to say, well, if we're not using that, we don't have to use this. And if we're not using this, then we don't have to use that. I don't want us to revert back to bad habits.
Yep. No, and that's a good question. And thank you for asking that. So one of the good things about this is that Central has put out that Foundations in Hegarty are the programs that they will use alongside any curriculum, right? So there were 3 different core curricula options, but Foundations in Hegarty are the programs that they are saying we should use citywide. So that would be the only change that we would make to say centrally that is the recommendation, which we agree with. And actually it puts us in a good space because our teachers are now trained in it. One of the things that I have said, Lamar, and I think we have to be really clear, and I agree with what you're saying, is that I'm coming out and basically saying we know that we have to do a little bit more work to the English language learner portion of HMH, as we would have to do to any curriculum. Our students, we have so many students with varying language needs, and one curriculum that's not really focused on that as much as we are is not really going to meet all the needs of our students. So we're going to have to do some work in that area. And that's why I'm saying, like, Michelle is going to work alongside schools and work alongside the instructional team to really say, like, here's our recommended access points for our English language learners. So here's what Into Reading has, and here's how we're going to layer in and add to that. But that being said, it was the same thing, and I promise I'm not going to use the word fidelity because it backfired. It's the same thing that we talked about. Foundations in Hegarty are a research-based program, and that's why we had said to teachers, I know that you want to make these changes because you think it will support your students, but Foundations in Hegarty, they have to be done as scripted as that program is, because of the research that says when you do this program this way, this is how the students grow in phonics and phonemic awareness. In terms of into reading, we're going to be exploring and supporting in the same way that we did with Foundations Integrity. And my feedback to teachers is going to be, we can't change something that we don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we actually have to take the time to learn it. That's the mistake that we made in our curriculum many years, is like we had new teachers or different kind of expectations, or we went from what was before Next Generation? Common Core to Next Generation. No, we went from Common Core to Next Generation Learning Standards. And we just got so far away from understanding what our different curricula was, what was covering. And so it's really important to us that the teachers are supported so they truly understand what is the curriculum. And then the instructional practice is something that we always talk about, right? It's like, how do we use what we know is good for kids to take our curriculum and transfer that to instructional practice that best meets the needs of our learners. So for me, it's really about saying to our teachers this year, you have to understand into reading. We have to really take that time to learn it. You got to roll it out. You got to use the texts. You got to tell us what works and what doesn't. How's the teacher guide helping you? What about the online books? What are some of the things that, you saw worked really well with students and some of the things that didn't? So we're going to be engaging in that. But in order to do that, teachers have to do the program without making changes to it. That'll, and then we'll continue the conversation moving forward. And you and I, the same thing that we did with Foundations Integrity, teachers had questions that came up at your meetings, and we addressed them. And we'll do the same with Into Reading.
Understood. All right.
Okay. So Joe, I see your question about text and assuming they're age appropriate. So one of the things that I will say is any curriculum does go through a research phase, right? So we're doing Clavis right now. And Clavis is an intervention program that the city of New York has agreed to allow us to do, where the company that's doing the program is going to get feedback from the students in terms of data and the parents in terms of data, so they can say that this is part of the research that we've done to show that it works. HMH has something very similar where they didn't do it in the city, but they have gone through content of text and assuming that they're age appropriate. Curriculum writers for these companies also use universities, and it is a big process. I know that when we wrote and began the work that we did for our the Korean dual language program, which we presented at a CEC meeting, those teachers worked with the Korean consulate and other universities. So that part is really vetted and worked through before a curriculum is accepted and kind of given the stamp of approval to be sold. That being said, there's nothing to say that at an SLT meeting, that question or conversation can't come up where parents want to say, can we have access to the online text so we can see what our students will be reading? Absolutely. It's actually part of the engagement process. So thank you for that question too.
So I just want to make a comment, because oftentimes the parents will react. They're not proactive, they're reactive. So they'll be upset about something and they'll say, look, no one ever engaged with us. So maybe if the parents understood that there was an engagement process in deciding what the texts were from whatever these organizations are, but the next question is going to be, who are these parents that made those decisions, right? Are they being fairly representative of what is in our district?
I can also say to you from some of my conversations with building leaders who have begun unpacking the work, that many of the books in HMH, they've already been using in other curriculums. So it's not like HMH is completely, but that's not to say everything. So I think you bring up a good question. And Rachel, I think that's a question that we can offer to our President's Council presidents to really say, like, is this something that you would want to present with your principal or with the SLT at a PTA meeting to make sure that parents are aware of this engagement process? Or if there is this, if parents want to look at some of the books, and that's a good point that you bring up, Joe. Maybe we can speak to building leaders and even Anna and our team to really say, like, what are some of the books that are very similar, right? Like as when you showed the picture, I was like, oh, I've seen these books before. So there are some books that are very similar to kind of highlight that to parents. I think that would make them feel a little bit better of like, here's some of the things that we already do, and here's some of the new books, and here's how you can gain access to them. But that's a really good question. So Rachel, I know that that's actually something that we'll mention tonight at the meeting, that it's up to PTA presidents if they want this to be a presentation at a PTA meeting.
Okay, and I'll also make sure to let Francis know beforehand.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Okay, so I want to move very quickly to the next phase of the meeting, the next piece of my agenda, and I promise I will go through this very quickly. So I have given everyone a copy of the parent engagement policy. That was something that I sent to you guys. What I discovered is that it is a pretty scripted policy, and Lewis isn't here, right? He went on to that other meeting. Okay. Mike, do you have it that you could just put up there? Yeah, if not, I can throw it up there. It's a pretty scripted policy. I did add a couple of things to the plan, such as parent chats. I changed some of the work with and added some of the CBOs that we work with. And so the parent engagement policy does say some similar things. And so I wanted to just present it to you today to see if there are any questions, comments, if there's anyone that would want to change anything on the parent engagement policy. And if not, then what we will do is we will approve it. We will review it yearly, but it will be in place for the next 2 years. We will also send it to translation to get the new updates translated. And then it will go out to all of our schools to be posted on their website and sent to all families. So as long as there are no, what's the matter? Oh, as long as there are no additions that anybody would want to see, and if we are all in consensus today at the close of that, we will move forward with our parent engagement policy. So Mike, you could just actually scroll down a little bit. This was just the introduction that is just common language that are in all parent engagement policies. All right, you can stop there. Go back. Can you go back a little bit? Stop right there. Okay, so I added Beacon, but I also added Common Point Queens because, as you know, Common Point is a CBO that's used in many of our schools. And it really kind of highlights the work that these community-based programs do in support of not just our students, but of families. And actually, that's something that we've been doing a little bit more. I just had a meeting with Common Point, and we're talking about integrating more opportunities for families and supports for our families, just in terms of things like legal services, help with resume writing. So we're really excited about that. We're going to continue to publicize our preschool, our 3K and pre-K activities. You can go down. Parent orientations, which are an expectation, translation and interpretation. You can keep going, Mike. The implementation of middle and elementary fairs for families. Okay. And then keep going. So you'll see a couple of things that I did add, which is in terms of parent chats. Keep going. I think it's down more. Monthly parent coordinator meetings were still there. And then the adoption part just changes it from today, April 17th. And it says it will be given out to all families in dominant languages by June 30th, 2023, and it will be in effect for 2 years. So we will revisit this officially yearly, but make any of the changes. It is in essence, if everyone agrees, a 2-year policy. So in terms of this, like I said, you guys have access to it. If there are any questions, or if there's any feedback on it, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, so can we come to consensus of the adoption of our parent engagement policy for 2 years? Thank you, Rachel. Shirley, thank you, Joe. Lamar. Okay. Hey, Gus, we did it, see?
Say good.
Okay,
You're good now.
so before I turn the meeting over to you, there's one other piece that I wanted to talk about, and that was, however, when we talked about revisiting the parent engagement policy, we spent some time really discussing our expectation of what parent engagement should be across the district. And it is something that, since I've been the superintendent, that I have worked on improving. You know, we have Esther and Jenny who do a tremendous amount of work with our families, but they also are a tremendous support for our parent coordinators. And we also have Dr. D'Antona and I really talking about expectations and modeling for what parent engagement should be. So as we are working to design our next DCEP goals, which we will be presenting to you guys, our draft DCEP goals at the next meeting and in June. So I'll say that, you know, the rollout of interreading will be a goal. But the second piece is we really struggled last year with writing our parent engagement goal. And so we wanted to talk about kind of where we're headed. So Mike, I want to just turn it over to you really quickly. So you can go over some of the thinkings that we have around a vision for parent engagement that is in writing that we can refer to. So
Sure.
Go ahead, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. So just to bring you into a space of the conversation that I was having with Superintendent Domingo, you know, we were discussing where we had left off during the last meeting. And, you know, one of the things that we agreed upon was that it was important that we didn't lose context of what our overarching vision for the district was. So whatever we were doing, we wanted to keep in context of the strong roots, strong schools mindset, growing together as one community, so that we weren't doing something entirely different when we were thinking around the vision statement for parent engagement. So we wanted to make sure that there was some alignment between what we were saying there and what we want to say inside of an engagement statement. So it brought us back into this conversation. This was something that we began the year with, district beliefs around a core set of values that were linked into excellence, equity and diversity, wellness and safety, and empowering learners. With that, from many roots, growing as one community as a kind of backdrop to this conversation. Each of these statements that you see here, with excellence, equity and diversity, wellness, and empowering learners, they're all within a series of bullet value statements that we had created in the past. And one of which that's connected to the collaboration with families was right here. So collaborate with families and foster meaningful partnerships from early childhood through middle school years that support student achievement and build successful pathways towards college and career. That's kind of where we initially landed. That was our initial statement that we used in terms of building those partnerships with families. And as I started doing some research, many districts across the country had similar types of statements that were present inside of them. And a couple of them that you'll see here. This one at the top was from Chino Valley School District that I actually really liked the intro to it because it was around this idea of values that we have as a community. I'm not saying that these are the best values or these are the ones that we should adopt, but I like the idea that in terms of mindset, that everyone believes that all parents have dreams for their kids, right? Going into it with that kind of a mindset, to me, I believe is really meaningful. You know, that all parents have the capacity to support their children. That parents and school staff should be equal partners in their child's education, and that the primary responsibility is something that rests on us as school leaders and staff to ensure that we're promoting that that mindset.
Yeah. So Dr. Mike, I
yeah.
want to say something about that last bullet. And I think that's really important because that's a mind shift. That's just not a mind shift for District 25. That's a mind shift for schools. So, and it's something that we want to work towards. So if you think about that and maybe to hear from some of the parents in, on the DLT, the primary responsibility of building partnerships between home and schools rests mainly with school leaders and staff. That's really important. You know why? Because even for my own children, the only time I connect with school is when I want to. And, or when things are mandated by the school, like you have to send me a report card. You have to, you know what I'm saying? So one of the things that we are starting to do, and it is going to be a slow rollout, but we're working to change that mind shift with the responsibility of partnerships. And one of the ways that we're going to do it is through this book called Unreasonable Hospitality. So what this book, it's really written by a man named Will Gridara, who took a restaurant in New York City and made it the #1 restaurant in the world. And the way that he did it was focusing on creating relationships and opportunities that were not just about eating, but about making people feel a certain way. So we're going to be using this book with our district team. Sorry, Mike. Because I hear an echo too. We're going to be using this book with our district team. We're going to be using this book with parent coordinators, and we're going to be doing book clubs in our schools with students and teachers about unreasonable hospitality, which is what I love the most, right? When kids are saying, like, these are the things that we think will change the dynamics and the culture of our school and will make people want to really be part of a different layer of partnerships. So we're going to be doing this with our middle school students as well. And we're really excited about the work in taking this whole concept of being unreasonable as being wrong, right? Being unreasonable doesn't always have to be wrong. Being unreasonable is sometimes being different, right? Like when you say like you're being unreasonable. So it is one of the ways that we're going to use to shift this idea that parents are the ones that need to establish the partnerships to schools and students are going to build a culture of partnerships across the district. So I'm really excited about this work. It's also going to be work that we do with our district staff around making sure that we are always looking at the needs of the schools across our district when they're rolling out new things such as a curriculum and may ask for unreasonable things that we think are unreasonable, but it's actually making the learning experience for our students better. So I just wanted to present that to you guys. If the DLT is interested in being part of this as a book club, we are happy to make sure that you guys have access to these books as well. It's a really, really exciting way to look at how we service our communities. So I didn't know if anybody had comments about that. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to say you guys do a great job in our district with, reaching out to the families and encouraging parent engagement. But sadly, most of the times parents don't even, pay attention to that. They only become reactive when something goes wrong with their child, right? So, that's the state of mind that we're in. And, unfortunately, they kind of forget that we have these programs, but they don't bother until something goes wrong.
Well, you know what? I also think that is the mind shift that we want to set as well, where it is kind of, if we have this idea of responsibility of building partnerships rests on the school, then parents will at least know the things that we do. And sometimes when parents call and they're upset, that's when I really have an opportunity to talk about all of the things that we do have in place that they can take advantage of. So it's important to make sure that you're constantly, looking at different ways to engage parents. There's not going to be one silver bullet. It's always going to be kind of a moving target. And it's something that we know and take on the challenge, and we want to model for our schools as well.
Yeah, and I think, for me, as I was looking at these values, and these are, like I said, it doesn't mean that will necessarily agree on all the language that's within those value statements, but I do think that coming through the lens of, what is our mindset matters. If we're not coming at this through the lens that, that all of our families believe a certain way about their children, then it leaves open the opportunity to say, you know what, well, that parent really doesn't care about their kid, and therefore, I'm not going to necessarily reach out the same way that I would, because they already have this mindset that they're not going to engage. So I think, organizing ourselves around a set of core values, I think makes sense, which is kind of why I added this one into this slide, this very small slide deck for us to consider. And within that same set of values, then they included some things that they believed were important in this particular district. Across the district, there are opportunities for parents to attend informative meetings, workshops, and decision-making committees. Schools provide opportunities for parents and community members to engage in decision-making, volunteering, and participate in workshops that are linked to student learning and or social emotional development and growth. Which I like the connection between, here are the things that we value, that we believe in all of our parents and in our schools, and here are the ways that we're going to go about doing that as a district and school system. Another example, which you'll see very similar to what our value statement is going to be on the next slide, ensure that all families, educators, and community members become partners in the lifelong success of all students by empowering all participants and giving them the skills and knowledge to be active, well-informed contributors to their students' education. This part, the reason why I pulled this one out is because I really like this space of all participants and giving them the skills and knowledge to be active, well-informed contributors. It's very difficult for someone to engage in making connections with the school if they don't know what the heck is going on. And I think that's part of our responsibility too, to build that space.
Yeah. And Mike, I always use Joe and Shirley as examples of this quote, that one statement, because it's about building trust, and it's about being able to say, I'm going to give you the information as a parent leader that you need to either agree or disagree with me, to ask the questions that you need as a parent leader on behalf of parents. And I think that is something, once again, that has always been my vision in my interactions with parents. But it is also how, I want to be treated as a parent. And it is, I think, what makes me a successful leader, right? Because one of the things that we say is, when Joe and I are sitting at a CEC meeting, we're not always on the same page, right? I represent an entire district and Joe represents parents in an entire district, right? So, but it's okay as long as we're speaking from the same lens. And I think that's really important in terms of ensuring that our parent leaders have the knowledge to contribute to making decisions about schools. And that is a gap. And I don't think that's just a gap here. I think that's a gap across the city, across, the state, across the country, right? Like, how do we build trust amongst our parent leaders to say, like, I'm going to tell you everything. And when we come to the table together, we're going to be able to have those conversations in the right way for schools, for, students. So I think, once again, this is something that I believe in, that, Mike believes in. But I want to make sure as a DLT, if we're going to go in that direction in terms of really saying to our building leaders and to our parent coordinators that it's not just about a workshop, right? Where parents sit there but it's about how we get parents to interact differently with the information that they have to participate in making decisions about what's happening across their schools.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. And, so it kind of brings us into this next space of conversation. And, from this current district value statement of collaborate with families and foster meaningful partnerships, this is the original space that we included in our values across District 25. To, thinking about this first space of what the Chino Valley School District valued, do we believe that we should also have a similar set of value statements that, kind of correspond with what we believe in as a district community? I personally like the idea of changing mindset and thinking about our families in a different way as this particular district did. I like that idea. And then bringing it into this space of, what we do as a district to promote those values that Superintendent Domingo has laid out, this idea of excellence, equity, and diversity, wellness, and empowering learners. So I took those two statements and kind of organized them into, one for District 25. Certainly making sure giving credit to the spaces where we got it. But through this idea of, as a district, we will collaborate with families and community members by providing routine opportunities to attend. I think sometimes, when we say that we provide opportunities, it may be here or there, but what's the routine way that we're doing it as a community? Again, to build this space of creating active, well-informed contributors to our students' education. District 25 and schools will provide opportunities that are linked to student learning and or social emotional growth to promote this idea of college and career pathways. So linking all of those things together into this very drafty, by the way, very, very drafty statement, but aligned with some of the things that we found that might bring us into a space of a common lens around parent engagement as a district. So that's kind of just a space to kind of linger on and reflect on these two things. This initial statement, but also some of those values that we believe in as a collective community, that they very well may align with this previous slide around making sure that everyone's on the same page, that, families have dreams for their kids. That mindset matters. Yeah, I'm sorry, Danielle, you were saying?
No, that's fine. So one of the things that we're asking the team to do is to really, we gave you examples of core values. So Mike, can you go back for that?
Yep.
So if there's any core values that you like here that you think are representative of where we want the district to go, or if there's other layers of core values, I know that's something we talked about at the last meeting, that you would want to see down in, our actual parent engagement values, systems, and beliefs and structures. Now you can go to the second, next slide. And if there's anything you would want to change just in terms of the wording regarding what we're saying that starts with across District 25, and these are the things that we're going to do. I think the excellence, diversity, and equity, and wellness and safety and empowering learners is really standard. It's what our school vision and mission represents. So that would be a constant because that comes directly from those documents. But anything else here is subject to your feedback and things that you might want to see. So you can add things to the chat. So we could take things for, in terms of comments, but things that you would want to highlight in terms of our core values, I think are very important for us to capture as we start to craft our parent engagement goal for the next school year. So, all right, so Shirley's talking about family empowerment as a core value, right? So Mike, go back to the example again. So Shirley, in terms of a value, how would you want to see that phrased in terms of, like I'm actually thinking about, Shirley, like if we look at, we can include family empowerment being part of that, but we can also say something like primary responsibility for building partnerships between home and school rests mainly with the school leaders and staff to engage family empowerment. I don't know. It's something like we should to promote family empowerment. What do you think about that? Or do you want that separate?
I don't mind it being together, but in order to be empowered, we need to be informed. We're informed. To be informed, that's the only way empowerment is going to come. So parents can give and articulate feedback, right? Or give suggestions, or ask questions, or make decisions. Empowerment is, you need to be informed to be empowered. So
but that kind of goes like with that sample. So we can say something like all parents should have access to skills and knowledge, like that bottom piece, Mike, to be active, well-informed contributors to the decision-making process at the school level, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
at the district and school level, right?
mm-hmm.
I like that.
Partners, contributors. Definitely informed contributors.
Yeah, you know what? I like contributors better than partners because I mean, we do have partnerships, but I think that they should be contributing to, yeah. Um,
Danielle, if I could make a comment.
yeah,
Yeah, I know that as the superintendent and the district as a whole, you've been concerned with parent involvement and engagement for a long time. And you do a wonderful job. You do these surveys. You really are very thoughtful about it. And the language and the policy and what you're struggling with is important. But the question I always ask is, what are the structures that make it happen? In other words, if you say that parents are going to be engaged in A, B, and C, etc., well, what is the mechanism for that taking place? So, going forward, as you implement, the policy, think about, what you can add or what you can do to put, some structural, systemic structural language or institutions into place going forward.
that's a good comment. Thank you, Gus, to say things like if we say all parents should have access, what does that mean? Right? Like how does that translate into action? So yeah, definitely something to think about. Joe, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touch on it on the point about primary responsibility, but I think if parents understand, or if we have language that says, look, we as parents entrust our child to school staff, so we want some acknowledgement of shared responsibility on the mindset of our children, right? So I think if we, show this partnership of shared responsibility, that you'll gain a better trust, I guess, with parents.
Yeah, so I like what you're saying, like with shared
Kind of fit in right
responsibility.
in this one here, right?
Yeah, equal
Almost
That
like
one
partners.
and the next
Yeah.
one, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But like I'm thinking about the primary responsibility for building partnerships between home and school kind of brings me to this too, which is like, this really talks about us being a service economy and what that looks like, right? So like, we want to start thinking about parent engagement as a way. So if we're saying we don't have enough of it, right? And how we're going to, and parent empowerment, and how we tap into that, like that, it's something we're going to have to do on our ends because, and is Teresa still here? And Lamar, I want to kind of weigh in on you guys just around, like, if we're talking about that primary responsibility is not a parent saying, I want to engage. It's more about like, this is the work that we do. So we are like, just say it's a restaurant. Think of school as being the restaurant. People come in and we want them to engage, but like, and maybe even make decisions about how to make it better. But like, if you think about that in that kind of way, like you got to first get parents to want to come into that relationship, and that rests on the school. But that is a mindset shift. Teresa, are you?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with, we welcome parents in for activities and we welcome parents in for fun things, and we get those parents that are always involved to be part of. But then it's those parents that we can't reach, the ones that, we really want to get a handle on. I mean, we've opened up the, the community food and we've had things like that. So we've engaged with a different set of parents who normally wouldn't be showing up at our building, but now they're showing up at our building because we have things that they need. We did those little kits for them and things of that nature. But even at that point, they come because it's something they need. It's not because something they really want to get from us. And I think in middle school, we lose a lot of parents also, which becomes an issue for us because we're like, you were so good in middle school, in elementary school, why aren't you still coming and showing up and hanging out on the corner and talking? So there's different ways that we're trying to engage them, but a lot of times I think parents just don't have the time. I love the idea of still being able to Zoom things and have have also in person. We did our first in-person meeting not too long ago, and we had a nice bunch of parents that showed up. But we're always trying to find things that make them come in because they want to, not because they have to. And having the financial literacy coming up for parents, we're going to do that. These are just things I'm doing at my school right now, but I'm sure there are other principals who are doing very similar or doing things that pinpoint right to their parent group. We're going to try to do a cooking class, healthy cooking, and having that. We're doing a trip with that. So get the kids engaged, you get the parents engaged, and you kind of move ahead. And I feel bad sometimes when we don't have big numbers for things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm reminded of a story of a school back in the Bronx that I read about years ago. And a new principal there was a low parent turnout, particularly with the dads. So he opened the gym. I may have told the story to you, Danielle. I may have shared it with you. He opened the gym on Saturdays. So the kids wanted to come because the gym is open on Saturdays. And the dads will come because they'll play ball with their kids. And when they had conversations with the principal, the dads always said, well, I didn't have the greatest experience in school, so I kind of, what's the word? I stay away from it. I kind of shy away from school activities. But if this is what my child wants to do, then I'm more engaged and I'll do this. And that opens the door to other opportunities. So it's harder to get folks to be engaged, but it's really about what interests a particular community. And 24 is not the same as 201, and 201 is not the same as 120, and et cetera, et cetera. So you really have to have an ear on the ground as to what moves your building and what moves the school community. And it's a hard sell sometimes, especially, now in the world with two working parents, it's a hard sell, right? But if you just keep at it, I think the consistency is key. And I think as a district, that's what you just have to maintain, is just be consistent with what the goal is. And eventually it'll come around.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that kind of leads to that mindset shift that I'm also thinking about, where, like, if you take your example, it was the school that opened the gym. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of, if the school had not taken that responsibility for building that partnership, then that partnership may never have happened. And that, I think, is a mindset shift. And from that, I'm just thinking in terms of leadership. Like, let's just say a teacher came to me and said, I really need to connect with Danielle's parents. Now, as the building leader, I'm like, oh, Danielle's dad comes on Saturday. Why don't you see if you could come in and stop by? And so that kind of, where we're talking about that responsibility of always, sometimes it's kind of open and shut. It's like, well, I did this. And I kind of said to somebody one time, like, parent engagement is sort of like myself as a parent. Like, I always have to try something different. I always have to keep going because things change and communities change and needs change. So I think, kind of like what Teresa said, she does that a lot too. She's always morphing sort of what works for her family. So I think this is a good conversation to talk about what Shirley is saying, which is access to knowledge so they can be empowered, changing that narrative about who's responsible for building partnerships, and then talking to, like, what Joe is saying, because Joe is also saying, like, I hear what you guys are saying, but there's also has to be that conversation amongst parents about them taking responsibility as well, right? Did I capture that?
Yeah, so I'm just, I'm looking at it also, as an attorney, right? So they're all minors. They're all under the age of 18. So legally, they cannot make their own decisions. And this is kind of ties into what Teresa says. A lot of parents forget that even though their child's in middle school, you're still legally responsible for your child. So I think the parents need to understand that the school's got your back, right? Like, you may not be, involved, but we got you covered. And I think that's the message that or the acknowledgement we should give to the parents.
All right, so we're going to work on this. And if anybody wants to add any other statements, this will be part of our formation of the DCEP goals for next year. And I'm actually excited to be doing this work.
And I kind of like, and just Joe, kind of what you're saying, this idea of like this mutual accountability for the success of a child, right? So it's not just about, yes, I'm doing what I have to do for my kid as a parent at home, but it's that mutual relationship between that homeschool connection is almost kind of like that.
So I mean,
what
right?
I'm hearing.
So you could say parents and school staff should be equal partners and like have mutual accountability. In the if you wanted to add that.
Yeah, I'll just kind of put the language there now, and then we can come back and rephrase it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think this was a great conversation, and thank everybody for being part of that.
Yeah, and please feel free to share anything as we're moving forward. I'll revisit this during the next session with some revised language, and then everyone can take a look at it again.
Yep. Gus, I just wanted to move to Bill.
Can I quickly say one more thing, Danielle?
Oh, yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
guys, I just wanted everyone to be aware, just a quick goal follow-up with in relationship to the parent engagement goal. We did gather all of the feedback from our families. We did make notes around certain things that were of areas that we wanted to improve. I did want you guys to be aware that we are in the process of offering some parent chats in the area of social emotional learning, and there will be some subsequent supports around SEL that will come based as a direct result of what parents said in that survey. And we are also sending this message out to all families within the next couple of days. We're just waiting for translation to come back, basically informing our families to let them know that based on what they've said, that we do need to really work on creating more opportunities, especially with the restrictions being lifted over the past month or so, is to make sure that we're offering more of this space for families to really truly be involved in school. And what I have been seeing, especially as I visit buildings, there are more and more opportunities. Schools are really creating spaces for parents and their kids to engage in a variety of different activities. I just wanted you guys to be aware that this is something that we have not forgotten. We did take the data and we have connected with our building leaders and our parent coordinators to really make sure that we are bolstering these opportunities between now and the end of the school year. And we will resurvey again in June to see if perspectives have changed because of it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you and Shirley really quickly, and then Gus will go.
Sure. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Let me know when you guys can see my screen. Share. Does everyone see it?
Yep.
All right. So for this month, these are 6 high schools for D25. We have our superintendent advisory session, which is going to be held here at the Linden office. And it will be from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And the date has been changed from April 20th to April 27th. And the new date, well, we're keeping the date for June 15th. But just please note that there is a revision in the date for April 20th. It is now April 27th. And you can also use the QR code. We're having Uptown Town Hall, which will be June 1st. Again, we're using the QR codes that may make it easier for parents to utilize. Our family forum, our upcoming dates will be April 25th, May 30th, and June 27th. And we have been having a nice turnout for those. So we're asking that, when parents come to spread the word and try to bring at least one or two other parents in, just that they're learning more about the schools and our approaches here at the district office. We also have a new updated family forum flyer. You'll see that we have now changed from New York City Department of Education to New York City Public Schools, with Mayor Adams flying there under mayor, and Chancellor Banks. And again, you'll see that we're using the Zoom, and we're using QR codes to try to make it more user-friendly for our families. We're really excited about our upcoming Future Ready student celebration. This is a completely teenage-run conference where our students are going to be singing songs. They'll be possibly doing poetry. There will be like a little robotics competition. It's really something that students from across our 26 schools are participating in. It's going to be held on May 20th. And we did have to change the date for that because the chancellor had the principals meeting on a Saturday. But that's going to be from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Food will be served to our families and to students that are in attendance. And some of the additional workshops that we're including will include teen suicide and prevention, knowing that coming back out of the pandemic, this is something that we're seeing citywide, not just in Queens North, but trying to put more supports in there so our students, especially at the high school levels, feel more comfortable and they know where to get outreach and support. Cultural sensitivity and cry for help is world peace possible. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing here, Queens North District, we're saying that we are definitely part of the solution. So high schools have been in need of teachers who are duly certified in a content subject area and a teacher of speakers of other languages certification to serve the needs of our English language learners. So there's always been a need for teachers of MLL as well as special needs. So with the significant increase of the L's in our population due to the number of asylum seekers entering our country, and the school's Queens North High School is part of the solution. How are we doing this? We're partnering with St. John's University, and they're offering an opportunity for qualified high school teachers who currently have their master's to attend the Advanced TESOL certification program at no cost to them. So this is really a pretty amazing program. We're trying to get as many teachers involved so once they become a part of this group, part of this cohort, they'll go through it as a group, and they'll get licensed, and they'll help our kids in an even better way. So now we're going to go on to the actual schools highlights and celebrations. So for this month, we're going to be celebrating John Bowne High School. The Law Institute at John Bowne, they had a mock trial prosecution team that was successful in winning the round one against Hillcrest High School. Congratulations to the prosecution team. Law students visited the Queens Criminal Court on March 8th. Students were able to observe 4 arraignments, including bail application hearings, a murder trial, and had question and answer with the judge, the court officer, and the commanding officer. The Law Institute welcomed FBI agents Jessica DeBugno, Andrew DeChico, NYPD Special Victims Unit Detective Danielle Phoebus, New York State Court Officer Major Ernest L. Owens, Alexandra from the Court Attorney Referee Gibson Dunn, and Crutcher lawyer Colleen Devine, Queens District or Assistant District Attorney Francesca Basso, and Rodley Jean Charles, Community Coordinator. For Youth Empowerment Unit, many of the annual career days were on March 15th. Students truly enjoyed the chance to speak and interact with industry professionals. So some of these pictures definitely align with the text, others do not. But this is what the school has provided to me. So I'm going to go on to the next page so you can see more interesting things that are happening at Bowne. Right? Not only are they doing academics and obviously have a very strong law department, they also have very creative student population. So part of what they did is the cast of the Laramie Project, which is a Broadway show, they saw Funny Girl on Broadway with Leah Michelle as their production from a cast party. So you can see the pictures there, and you can see that they're in Times Square. They're having a great time. And this is another highlight reel here. So for computer science, right, this is another big push for the high schools. Over 250 community or computer science students participated in the college and career day. There were 4 different speakers who were all graduates of John Bown High School and now working in the technology sector, such as Amazon, Goldman Sachs, IBM, and Google. Mr. Faisal Farouk, pictured, is also a computer science adjunct professor at Hunter College. CSI had a successful game night. Students got to know each other over board games, card games, Jenga, Twister, and more. And the event was also able to raise funds for the major. 3 members of the NYPD, Executive Director Jose Tejada, Detective Karine Poe, lead of Vulnerability Management Team, and Detective Stacy Mincham, a lead of Security Awareness, visited the cybersecurity classes on March 31st to discuss how different types of technology are used to prevent attacks, such as systems, data breach, malware, identity theft, and phishing in New York City. And that is definitely something that is really high interest, not only to our students, but absolutely necessary for our country. And then to kind of round this out, you can see that the kids are playing some of the games there, right? 3 John Bown students were finalists in the 9th annual Queensborough Art Festival. Their artwork is displayed on the Queens Museum for May 2nd. And then the Air Force RJ OTC, the JROTC participated in the Queens MetroCard Challenge Cup drill meet, where they earned 2 first place finishes in unarmed inspection and cadet with cadet basic drill. Cadets from that program received basic CPR training from the FDNY. Through the FDNY SMART program, 80 plus cadets learned how to perform CPR and how to use an AED. So those are life-saving skills. That's really amazing that they're doing that, and better preparing them for how to respond to emergencies. And they also traveled to Brentwood, New York for the Long Island area drill competition. And lastly, their ag teacher, Mr. Dickler, is this recipient of the year's Golden Owl Award for the FFA district. And that rounds out the high school report.
Thank you, Bill. Shirley, I
You're
didn't
welcome.
know if you had any additional announcements from
so
the high school. Yep, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Good morning, everybody. So the high school citywide subcommittee meeting, briefly, everyone should have received the notes. The hidden gem was Gregorio Lutheran High School for Science and Mathematics. Their school is in the borough of Manhattan. And again, for details, they did highlighted their first aviation lab, and other highlights of what makes this high school a special and hidden gem. It is the opposite, well, not opposite, of our aviation high school in the borough. They actually, the aviation high school in Queens is the mechanics of the plane, and this school actually has trained pilots, so they could become a pilot, aviating pilot. So it's a hidden gem that was highlighted for last month's high school subcommittee. And I think the main presentations were the Mosaic and Black Studies curriculum resources. So Deputy Chief Linda Lowe, along with Brian Carlin, they discussed the Mosaic curriculum and the resources and where you can find them for K to 12. And then also the Black History curriculum, starting this year, the end of this year, some starting next year, will have AP Black American History, and along with the Hidden Voices, which would highlight women history, LGBTQ+, AAPI, Americans with Disability, Latinx communities, etc. That would be one of the key part of that curriculum, the Hidden Voices of New York City. In regards to Queens High School President's Council, our meeting is this evening, and I think our main highlight is this Wednesday is our candidate forum for the 2 seats on the Citywide Council of High School Education Council. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Shirley. Okay, Gus, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry.
okay.
I'm sorry. One more thing. We're going to have training for June transfer of records towards the middle of May for June transfer of records for our parent leaders. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Shirley.
In the interest of time, I'm going to skip sharing my screen and showing you slides of things that you have. I did send out quite a few attachments. Mainly the attachments relate to the CEP. I'm going to flip the agenda and first talk about New York State accountability. The superintendent last meeting went over all of the categories. These categories are in place for 1 year. We'll see what they come up with for the following year. But I have some good news to share. The 2 schools that the state chose, 379 and 120, for Title I paper review monitoring. I was at a meeting and the state is now telling us that they're not going to visit any schools in the city of New York. They're going to use the paper monitoring and deal with Central. Now, I haven't received that in writing, but it's my intention to call Renee and Rob, who sent me a lot of information for the paper prep, and were preparing for a possible visit. That right now, my understanding is that they don't have to worry about that. So I don't have it in writing, but it was mentioned at a meeting with the state that I participated in. So that's my expectation at this point. The most important thing to focus in on with the CEP is the CEP and the DCEP are going to be on iPlan. The new template is available. I sent you a copy of it, along with a bunch of resources for doing needs assessments, conducting the review process, and developing goals and action plans and the rest. They are supposed to have the actual templates online on April 20th. So schools in the meantime can utilize the template that I sent out, which is in Word, which you have a copy of, and the various resources for developing their plans. The resources that I sent out are particularly useful because they all have links to other resources on iPlan and elsewhere that schools can utilize. The deadline for a full draft CEP is June 16th. So all schools citywide have until June 16th to develop a draft. That's a little different than in years past. They want to get a draft in earlier. That includes the language translation policy for parents, the LTI, the LAP, all of those different pieces. And then routinely, just like we do every year, they are going to have their goals and budget alignment, and that's supposed to get certified by July 28th by the superintendent, June 30th by the principal. I've heard some information about the availability of budgets for particular schools, etc. I've heard this in the past. They should not have a negative impact on the alignment process. Any school that needs any assistance or has any concerns can reach out to me. The district can decide whether any training is needed between now and June 16th or any support. I'm always available 24/7, as everybody knows, to help any individual school or groups of schools with the whole CEP process. And as I said, we have all of these resources. The other piece is that, unlike in the past, we usually have sent out the SLT calendar of activities and suggested actions in the beginning of the year. They wanted schools to have that early, looking forward to next year as possible. So in the attachments that I sent you, you also have the SLT and the DLT, for district leadership teams, suggested actions and activities for the entire year. They're not written in stone, they're suggestions, but most schools and DLTs find them useful. They also have attachments that can be accessed and utilized. And if anybody has any questions on any particular item, what we do is we take feedback from the schools and from the DLTs citywide every year, and that's how we improve the document. We add things, we make things clear, etc. So if anybody, in looking at them, you have the attachments, something occurs to you, please let the district know, and they will let me know, and I will follow up with Central on them. I think that's all my items, right, Danielle?
Yep.
And I tried to be as brief as possible. Thank you. And I didn't hear it mentioned, but I'm as a grandparent, I'm thrilled that elementary schools, I understand, are going to start locking doors and have a monitoring system, right?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten any official feedback around the impact of that on the district, but I did see some of that. I do have a meeting tomorrow, so I'll be able to give the community a little bit more information based on that. Okay, are there any other constituencies that have announcements? CEC, CSA, UFT? Yep.
Can I just speak for CECs? The CEC elections begin on April 21st through May 9th. For those that have a NICSA account, New York City Schools account, you need to go on and place your vote at that point, because the CEC is up for election, and we encourage you to vote. That's it.
Okay.
I want to add to that, not only those who have NISCA, those who don't have parent leaders, stakeholders, tell them to create their NISCA account. That's the only way they can vote. So there's really no choice. Everyone has to have a NISCA account, and we're using it for Gamma and all that other stuff anyway. So we need to encourage and remind our families that they must have their NISCA up and running, especially to vote. And we want everybody to vote, because that's part of the family empowerment, the parent and family empowerment, by voting our representatives on the Education Council to represent us, right? Yeah. And I just want to add back to Gus. We had a meeting with Mark Rapissant and the Chancellor and his team and all that about the locking of the doors. That is happening. When it's going to be implemented is another thing. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting sometime this month regarding that again, regarding that lock safety. But yes, that's happening. They're spending a lot of money on that.
Good.
Yeah. And I just received an email a little while ago. So we do have a new DC 37 rep, Monique Liscano. She's not new to District 25. She was a parent coordinator in our district. We're happy to have her here. So Monique, welcome. Yes. And go ahead. I didn't know if you wanted to introduce yourself and say a little bit in terms of DC 37.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Monique Liscano. I worked 14 years as a parent coordinator in District 25. And early on, I was the CEC secretary for District 25 as well for a year. I'm really excited to have joined DC 37. I'm looking forward to working with all of you and attending the meetings on a monthly basis. And I was here also to ask about the locking of the doors. I know my director has instructed all of us at the DLTs to bring that up. It is a concern for us and for our members, because as we've walked into schools citywide, it's not just District 25, it's citywide. A lot of us are coming back because with the concern for school aides and parent coordinators who are being utilized to cover for safety agents when they need to do a sweep, or they need to eat or use the bathroom, or, we really do not want our members to be used as safety agents while safety agents are out on their breaks. We want to work together with the superintendent to ensure that we have enough safety agents in the buildings, because our staff is not trained. School aides are not trained, parent coordinators are not trained, support staff is not trained to cover those doors in case of an emergency. And we know how important it is to have those safety agents there, especially during this time. So we too are very excited about the announcement of the cameras coming in. I do believe I read an article that said possibly May. We do know they're starting in elementary schools. So we're looking forward to hearing more information as it comes. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. And everyone have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Monique, can you just drop
Thank you.
your email address into the chat for me so I can add you to the DLT distribution list?
Will do. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
and
you. Good
Janet
seeing
will
you.
make sure that we'll update all of our DLT documents to
Mhm.
include Monique.
Yeah, I'll need an
Sounds good.
email to get her iPlan access.
Yep. Okay, so any other comments from any constituencies? Yep, so as I said, we'll wait to hear more about the locking of the doors. I know that that's something that Joe's been working very strategically on. Shirley, maybe at your next meeting, you could talk about District 25 kind of getting bumped up on a list, because we always seem to be at the bottom of that list. We've been talking about locking doors. What has it been, like 6 years now, 7 years? So, but we're looking forward to getting a schedule of when that will happen for our district. So, okay. If there is nothing else, our next meeting is May 15th, 9:00 on Zoom. And if, I know that Bill responded just in terms of the book club. I know that we always have a lot of work to cover, but if there are DLT members who are interested in a copy of the book Unreasonable Hospitality, you could just email me and we could figure out a way to get you that copy as well. So thank you guys for meeting with us the first day back from break. I know that it's a pretty busy day for everyone, so I appreciate that. Thank you for my team for your presentation today. And we will see you soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a
Bye,
great day,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Stay
you.
well,
Take
everybody.
care.
Thank you.
Have
Be
a
well,
great day,
everyone.
everyone.